Hi guys, welcome back to the videos. I've changed up the way that we've looked at the last part of the factoring in this unit, so I'm actually going to get you to turn to section B of the lesson on factoring special quadratics. So you're looking for this page that has B perfect squares at the top. So you go ahead and find that. We've already talked about these situations. We just haven't looked at the factoring part. So we did questions like this, where we've got 2x plus 3 in a bracket squared. We know that that means 2x plus 3 times 2x plus 3. But we also learned a little bit of a shortcut to jump from here right to the answer. So the way we do that is we square the first term. So if we square 2x, we get 4x squared. On the end, we square the second term in the bracket, so that's going to be plus 9 on the end. And if you remember, to get the middle term there, we multiply 2x times 3. So we multiply those two terms together, and then we double that answer. So 2x times 3 is 6x, and if we double that, we get 12x. So this is the answer that we get when we take that shortcut. So we know, if we're working backwards and trying to factor something like this, we know that a trinomial is a perfect square. So this is a perfect square trinomial here. We know that it's a perfect square if the first term is a perfect square. And we talked about perfect squares today in class because we were looking at difference of squares. This is the same idea. 4x squared is a perfect square. The last term is also a perfect square. And in this case, 9 is a perfect square. And this is the part that's different than difference of squares, because in difference of squares, we just have two terms. This one, we've got three terms. And in this case, the middle term is double the product of the first and last term's square root. Okay, so if we take the square root of 4x squared, we get 2x. If we take the square root of 9, we get 3. And if we multiply those two together and then double that answer, we get 12x. So, I made a note there, if you don't happen to spot the perfect square trinomial, you can still do it by complex trinomial factoring. You'll still end up with the same answer. You just need to remember to write your final answer as a single bracket when you do it. And I'll show you how that looks here. So if we're determining if these following trinomials are perfect squares, the first term has to be a perfect square. And the square root of that's 3x. The last term has to be a perfect square. The square root of that is 5. And if I multiply these together and then times them by 2, I get 30x. And that's what I have in the middle here, so I know that it is a perfect square. So if I was factoring this, I would get 3x and 5 in the bracket squared. And the sign in the middle here is the same as the sign in the middle up there. So if I did 3x minus 5 in a bracket squared, that would be the correct factoring of that question. Now we're looking at this one. 4x squared is a perfect square. That's square root of that is 2x. Uh-oh. Because that's a negative 81, we can't take the square root of that. So this is not a perfect square trinomial. Today in class we discussed how we always want to check for a common factor first. And here's a situation where that comes up because 2 will divide into every term here. So I'm going to factor out the 2. And then we'll see what's going on in the bracket. So now that I'm looking in the bracket, x squared is a perfect square. Square root of x squared is x. The square root of 16y squared is 4y. And if I multiply these two together and then times that by 2, I get 4xy times 2, and that's 8xy, and that's what I have up above. So that means that I can factor it as a perfect square trinomial. So remember, it's going to be x at the beginning of the bracket, 4y at the end of the bracket, and the sign comes from the middle up above, and then that will be squared. So that's what that's going to look like in that situation. Now, this one here's got a little bit of a misprint. This should actually be a 16 at the end here. So example 3 says 9x squared plus bx plus 16 is a perfect square trinomial. So in order to figure out what the value of b is, we're going to do what we've done before. So the square root of 9x squared is 3x. The square root of 16 is 4. If I multiply those together and times by 2, so 4 times 3x is 12x, times 2 is 24x. That means that that's what I need to get in the middle up here. And keep in mind that b could be equal to 24x or minus 24x. Because if it's equal to 24x, then we're going to get 3x plus 4 squared in the bracket. And if it's equal to negative 24x up above, then we're going to get 3x minus 4 squared in the bracket. Okay, so we're going to end off there. We're going to keep practicing our factoring the rest of this week and get ready for Tuesday's test. So we'll see you tomorrow.